You think you know your neighbors, right? See them out in the yard way below.
Yeah.
But, like, what if behind closed doors there's a whole other world going on?
A hidden world.
Exactly. And today we're diving into one of those hidden worlds. It all started with this BBC News story.
Oh, I remember this one.
Yeah, it's about a child that was kept hidden for 3 years.
3 years?
Yeah, so we're going to get into the details, talk about child neglect and the impact this has on kids, on their lives.
Right, the long term.
Exactly. And you know, full disclosure, this is tough stuff.
Absolutely.
But we're going to approach it, sensitively and really try to understand the specific situation and what it means in the bigger picture.
Yeah, the implications, yeah.
So the story takes place over in Cheshire, England. And basically we have a mother who kept her daughter hidden for 3 years, like literally hidden away in a drawer.
Like a chest of drawers.
Yeah, chest of drawers. And it was actually a visitor who heard the little girl crying that led to her being found.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I think the first question that comes to mind is how does something like this even happen?
It's the question, right? I mean, it's just mind-boggling. And this case especially, I mean, 3 years of isolation, that level of deprivation. I mean, think about it. At 3 years old, kids they're learning to talk. They're forming those crucial bonds with their caregivers. They're exploring everything.
Like little sponges.
They're sponges, exactly. And to not have any of that, it's just, it has such a huge impact, physically, mentally, everything.
And reading the details from the BBC report, it's just heartbreaking. Like she had never, ever seen daylight or felt fresh air on her skin.
Oh, my gosh.
And she was severely malnourished. They said she looked more like a 7-month-old baby than a 3-year-old.
It's just...
And get this, the only thing they were giving her was milky Weetabix through a syringe.
Wow.
Yeah, it's just...
And what's even more disturbing is that, I mean, this wasn't just about neglecting basic needs. I mean, this poor girl had a cleft palate and other medical problems that were just completely ignored. Untreated, yeah. The social worker who found her, I mean, she said she was just overcome with horror. And even the judge who was presiding over the case, he called it a living death. I mean, and this guy had been a judge for 46 years.
Wow.
So that should tell you something.
That's heavy. And it makes you wonder, right? Like, what about the social workers? The medical personnel, the police officers, everyone who has to deal with these kinds of situations. Like, what is that like?
Oh, it's got to be incredibly traumatic. I mean, they're the ones who are face to face with this kind of suffering. And it takes a toll, there's no question. So it really highlights the importance of having the right kind of support system in place for these folks. Counseling, debriefing sessions, training.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, the big question, right? The elephant in the room is why? Why would a mother do this to her own child? And in this case, the mother's explanation was that she didn't even know she was pregnant. And then when the baby was born, she just panicked and kept her hidden out of fear.
It's hard to wrap your head around that, for sure. But it does bring up some really important questions about the psychological factors that could be at play in a situation like this.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to diagnose anyone from a distance, especially not in this case, but, we have to consider things like postpartum depression, which can really, really impact a mother's ability to connect with and care for her baby. And there could be other factors too, right? Like past trauma or fear of being judged, maybe even a very deep denial.
So it's not a clear-cut, this person's a monster kind of situation.
Exactly. It's way more complicated than that. And it's important to remember that, even though we're trying to understand, to make sense of it, that doesn't excuse what happened to that little girl.
Right.
Not at all.
So let's talk about the little girl now. She's in foster care and is getting the medical attention that she needs. But what does recovery even look like for a child who's been through something like this?
It's going to be a long road. I mean, developmentally, she's missed out on so much. Things like walking, talking, basic motor skills, and then, the cognitive development, the social and emotional stuff. I mean, imagine having to learn how to interact with other people.
Yeah.
How to process your emotions, how to understand the world around you. Things that most kids just learn naturally as they grow up. So it's going to take a lot of work. Intensive therapy, speech therapy, physiotherapy, and just a safe and nurturing environment.
A loving home.
Yeah.
So this case, it's hard to even think about, but it forces us to look at this reality of child neglect. It's real, it's happening.
Yeah.
And it raises the question, how can we as a society stop this from happening?
Right. What can we do? I mean, are there gaps in our social safety net? Do we need to be doing a better job of recognizing the signs of neglect and making sure families know how to get help? Maybe this case can be a wake-up call for all of us to really look at how we're supporting families, especially those who are struggling in silence, behind closed doors. And we need to support those people who are on the front lines, the social workers, the medical professionals.
First responders.
Exactly, because this case really shows that, even in the most ordinary seeming places,
Yeah.
there can be these hidden struggles going on.
Yeah.
And it's up to all of us to look out for each other, for the kids in our communities, and make sure that every child has a chance to thrive, not just survive.
Right, that every child has a chance.
Yeah.
Well said.